morning. I am your worship associate, Ginger Hemingway. Welcome. As we begin today, we acknowledge that we gather on the unceded lands of the Agua Caliente Band of the Cahuilla people, and we commit to grow in our understanding and relationship with this land and with the people who inhabited it and nurtured it before our arrival. In this congregation, where we strive to honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person, you are welcome, no matter your sexual orientation or gender identity, your age or size, whether you're rich or poor. We welcome people of all races, religions, and cultures. We welcome you wherever you come from and whoever you love. We welcome all those who will learn and grow with us as we commit together to embrace the rich and beautiful diversity of the world. Our goal here is to build a community centered in justice, in compassion, and in love. We're glad you are with us this morning, whether you are here in the sanctuary or watching us from home. Your presence is a blessing. Now we'll ring the Tibetan bowl.
Good morning again and welcome. I am the Reverend Ian Riddell, and I have the honor and privilege and joy of serving the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert as its minister. However you found us, however many times you've been here with us or in person or online, welcome. We are a congregation grounded in our commitment to love and care and a tradition that celebrates the richness and beauty of individual lives and commits to working together to weave a tapestry made stronger and more vibrant by our collaboration and by the sharing of our lives and our visions for a thriving future for all of life. We share the sacred breath. We gather together to build the beloved community breath by breath, word by word, note by note, step by step. We gather together to sing and speak and dance and breathe the beloved community into being. This is our work. This is our calling. This is our joy. In a moment, I'm going to invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we sing together, We Give Thanks. We're going to sing it once through all together, and then we're going to sing it call and response. So we're going to do, oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for this precious day. You just sing the same hymn, just off by a couple of seconds. It will make beautiful music, trust me. Please rise in body or spirit.
Now join me for the child's pledge and unison aspiration. May love be the spirit of this church. May the quest for truth be its sacrament, and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. I've asked Steve Toproff to join me for the lighting of the biopop candle. Thank you, Steve. We light these candles in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and other people of color as we journey together towards spiritual wholeness. May we, as a beloved community, work to dismantle racism and all forms of oppression. May we live out our principles so that justice, dignity, and equity for all prevail. Now I have a reading from by Sharon Salzberg from the Kindness Handbook. It is all like an experiment. We see what happens when we recognize a connection with someone instead of feeling only alienation. We see what happens when we want to be freed of our own suffering. We see what happens when we pay attention to someone else's suffering rather than just their transgression. If our actions are infused with vision of interconnectedness, then love and kindness will join us in our efforts. Interconnectedness isn't an abstract, fanciful notion, but a direct seeing of a deeper reality. Consider for a moment something like a tree. We think of that tree as a distinctly defined object, standing there just by itself. But on another level of perception, the tree is not so completely separate. It is also the consequences, the manifestation of the function of an extremely subtle net of relationships. The tree is affected by the rain that falls upon it, by the wind that moves through and around it. It is affected by the soil that nourishes it and sustains it. It is affected by the weather, and by the sunlight, and by the moonlight, and by the quality of the air. I recall an image that Bob Thurman, professor of Buddhist studies at Columbia University, often uses to describe the flow of kindness and compassion that comes from seeing the world more truthfully. He says, imagine you are on the New York City subway and these Martians come and zap the subway so that those of you in the car are going to be together forever. What do we do? If someone is hungry, we feed them. If someone is freaking out, we try to calm them down. We might not at all like everybody or approve of them, but we are going to be together forever. And we need to respond with the wisdom of how interrelated our lives are and will remain. Now, Denise Agar will join us by video to introduce our Share the Plate recipients.
Good morning. I'm Denise Jansen-Eager, Chair of UUCOD's Social Justice Committee. Today, we share the plate with Safe Schools Desert Cities Scholarship Fund. In a moment, we will hear from Eric Ornelas, President of Safe Schools Desert Cities, and Elwin Agtong, College of the Desert student and former college recipient. But before we do, it is my honor to unveil the UUCOD Gloria Cap Scholarship in memory of our own Gloria, who tragically died a month ago. Gloria was a long-standing member and my co-chair of the Social Justice Committee. If that's not enough, she was vice president of Safe Schools Desert Cities. And if that's not enough, she was their scholarship committee chairperson. In this last role, she worked tirelessly so between 20 and 30 LGBTQ plus students each year could receive scholarships to support their post-secondary education. To kick off the UUCOD Gloria Cap Scholarship, Randy Steele and Carol McDaniel have generously issued us a $500 matching challenge to fully fund this $1,000 scholarship. That means if we raise at least $500 from today's offering, either through passing the plate or from the email you received in your inbox earlier today, or even by mailing in a check, they will match it with $500. Please give as generously as you are able to honor our own Gloria Cap. And now, Eric Ornalis and Elwin Ogton.
Thank you very much, Denise. I know Denise can't hear me, but thank several weeks at Safe Schools as we deal with the loss of Gloria. But we, as heartbroken as we are, we feel a renewed sense of purpose to continue to sort of take the torch from Gloria and push forward with the program that she was so very, very passionate about. And so, of course, we can't do that without the community's help. So we are very, very grateful to all of you for having us here and for sharing your plate with our students. We are very, very appreciative of that. Unfortunately, Elwin is unable to be here today. He did have a family emergency, so he wasn't able to be here. So what I thought I'd do is read you a very brief testimonial from one of our past students to give you an idea of the student's point of view of what we do at Safe Schools. Okay. This is from Carly Jacobs. I'm currently a student at Cal State University San Bernardino, and I'll be graduating this May with a bachelor's in psychology and a minor in gender and sexuality studies. Safe Schools Desert Cities was introduced to me in 2015 when I was a sophomore at Yucca Valley High School, taking a Spanish class with GSA advisor Jennifer Youngworth. I attended Palm Springs Pride that November, where I had a blast and was accepted as my authentic self for the first time. Since my first coming out experience was horrible, being in a supportive environment changed how I felt about being alive. As a result, I wanted to provide this experience to others. After acknowledging I was something besides straight, I actively participated in Safe Schools Desert Cities events, such as Pride Parades, Rainbow Youth Summits, and Pride Proms. At Pride Festival, Safe Schools would host a youth-only zone to provide a safe space for all youth. I vividly remember how I felt attending my real first Pride and being in a group surrounded by similar students who accepted me instantly. In addition to the endless activities and dancing, just having this space made me crave becoming more involved with the LGBTQ community. At Rainbow Youth Summit, Safe Schools hosted a variety of educational panels on LGBT plus themes, such as coming out, activism, drag, fashion, sexual health, and even scholarships. Additional events were hosted for youth, such as a Pride-centered prom event for youth ages 16 to 24. I have attended each prom since I was 16, and I will confidently say I chose to not go to my own senior prom in 2017, but you bet I was at Pride Prom. Pride Prom felt like the youth zone, except the entire event was catered to our experience, our enjoyment, and our safety. I wouldn't have felt the same at the prom my high school offered, and I know I wasn't the only one who felt this way. I also participated in the biennial leadership camp and returned as a youth counselor. My activism is deeply rooted in this organization, which literally proved to me that spaces existed in this world that wanted me. It gave me hope in a future where I would be supported and acknowledged and provided a reason for becoming an activist. These events encourage me to get out of my comfort zone, have fun, and increase my knowledge on the LGBT community. In addition to the personal connections I've made with diverse people over the past 4 years, Safe Schools has awarded me several scholarships and emergency financial support, including a scholarship for my master's in social work this upcoming fall. I've been on both sides of events since I was a student, and now I'm trying to give back via volunteering whenever I can. To reiterate, Safe Schools has entirely saved my life. Thank you very much for your support. We appreciate it. Thank you.
May all beings know peace. May all beings know an end to suffering. May all beings know and give and be love. May it be so. Will you join your voices together, friends, as we sing Spirit of Life, Fuente de Amor?
Rise in
Sorry, that will make you crave your lunch a little bit, I think. So, thank you, Jack, for these fabulous images, as always. I recently got back from a vacation out of town. I am very grateful to be serving a community that is committed to giving those who work here proper and appropriate vacation time away. It's a really wonderful thing. And it was a lovely break from regular life, and it was wonderful spending relaxed time with friends and playing a lot of Uno. But unfortunately, in the days leading up to the vacation, I'd be dealing with some pain in my ear, and that pain, as it often has in my life, took the opportunity of my being away and on vacation to grow into a very painful ear infection. Now, I'm doing much better now. Antibiotics are wonderful things after some eardrops and those antibiotics. But I had a couple of days in the middle of that week, some real pain. If you've ever had an ear infection, you know how hard it is to get away from, which meant I spent some extra time in bed. What was wonderful about it, though, was the care that I received from those around me. My husband, our friends, the doctor I saw. They saw my needs. They asked me to share what was going on, and they did what they could to help me rest and get better. Eardrops, painkillers, of course, but they also listened to me and showed their care when I said that I just needed to be alone and quiet. They let me choose the care I needed, which helped me feel much more comfortable and connected. Now, I don't recommend an ear infection as a way to find ideas for sermons, but it did focus my attention on the importance of taking care of each other in our relationships, in our communities, in our social gatherings outside these walls. Earlier this year, a movie called Leave the World Behind was released on Netflix. You might have seen it. It is a psychological thriller starring Julia Roberts, Mahershala Ali, and Ethan Hawke. It's about two families thrust together by bizarre and threatening things happening in the world around them. They are isolated, no internet, no phone service, no power at several points, and they're forced to figure out what is going on. More importantly, they are forced to figure out how they're going to respond to each other, and then respond to each other and their forced presence in each other's lives. Now, it won't be a spoiler to say to you that at first they are standoffish, suspicious, hostile to each other. They act in self-preserving ways at the cost of everyone's safety. But over the course of the movie, that changes. Eventually, frightened by the circumstances they are in, they find ways to connect with each other, to rely on each other, to trust each other, to talk to each other honestly, and to protect each other when the time comes. Now, the movie ends uncertainly, but what is certain is that the characters have learned some new ways of being with each other, new ways of caring for each other, and that makes a huge difference to them in facing what is to come. As I watched, I remembered Sharon Salzberg's words, which Ginger shared earlier. We see what happens when we recognize a connection with someone instead of feeling only alienation. The recognition of their connection was so crucial to the characters in that story. In her book, A Paradise Built in Hell, The Extraordinary Communities That Arise in Disaster, Rebecca Solnit examines the ways in which community and care arise in the face of massive disasters. Disasters like the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, Hurricane Katrina and its aftermath, 9/11, and others. Solnit says that the media, including the news media, likes to tell the story of humans resorting to barbarism, violence, and individual protectiveness after disasters occur. Every person for themselves, stories of violence and looting, of lawlessness, of fear. And these things do happen. But something else also happens, she says, even more so. Something that the stories told by the media tend to ignore or downplay. She says, When all the ordinary divides and patterns are shattered, people step up. Not all, but the great preponderance to become their brother's keepers. And that purposefulness and connectedness brings joy even amid death, chaos, fear, and loss. She writes of neighbors bravely helping other neighbors find safety, of sharing food and resources, of people providing housing and shelter and transportation to strangers, of neighborhoods pooling their food as their freezers thaw out, and eating and connecting on their neighborhood streets together. This is where a paradise is built, she claims, in the wreckage. It's not that we welcome the catastrophe, the disaster, or the collapse, of course not. But that what we become, what we can become, in the face of it, can be beautiful and saving. And it's important, she thinks, that we remember this and not just take the message of barbarism and violence we are fed by the media. She writes, were we to know and believe this, our sense of what is possible at any time might change. We speak of self-fulfilling prophecies, but any belief that is acted on makes the world in its image. Horrible in itself, she continues, disaster is sometimes a door back into paradise, the paradise at least in which we are who we hope to be, do the work we desire, and are each our sisters and brothers' keepers. Sharon Salzberg, we see what happens when we recognize a connection with someone instead of feeling only alienation. Now, here in this congregation, we do strive to engage in a culture of care, to recognize our connections and to fight alienation. I see you reach out to each other, offering food, like that lovely lasagna, and rides and companionship. I see you helping each other find resources that you need for your health and safety. I see you trying to pay attention to how we treat each other, sharing stories of each other's lives. I see you building networks of care. Almost every meeting I am in this congregation, there is a conversation about the people of this congregation. And it's not gossip. It's who's not been around? Where are they? What's going on with them? What is going on in the lives of the people we haven't seen or are worried about? Every meeting, not just the care team. Every meeting. We strive for a culture of care here. We're not perfect, but we strive. And we are always figuring out how to do that more intentionally, more lovingly. Our care team is always pondering how to care better. To that end, the care team has created a new charter for its work, describing who we are and what our work in the congregation is. I hope that you will join us for a little while after the service today as we share that charter with you and engage in some conversation together about what care in a congregation might look like. One of the other practices we are engaged and involved in as a congregation this year is thinking about the proposed changes to the way our national organization, the Unitarian Universalist Association, talks about the values that unite us. Changes to the language we as a large denomination use to describe the understandings and aspirations that we have in common for ourselves and our congregations and communities. I hope that you have taken the opportunity to click through the links that Jane Zahn has shared in our newsletter over the past while about the almost final language of the proposed changes. If you are in a Chalice Circle, you know that our monthly topics this year so far have been centered on the 6 values listed in the new language: interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, and justice. And then love, which is at the center as the ground from which those values grow. And if you've been paying attention on Sundays as well, you'll know, you pay attention on Sundays, don't you? You'll know that we've been focusing on the same themes as the Chalice Circles each month, thinking about these values from different perspectives and pondering what they might mean in our lives. And so this month, we are focused on the value of justice. We've been thinking about environmental justice as Reverend Barbara led us in the opening of our desert habitat a couple of weeks ago. I invited you to think about the action on voting rights last week, justice as voting rights. And this week, too, we are pondering justice. But Ian, you say, this week's service is about care. How is that about justice? Well, I could just straightforwardly say to you that when we care for each other, when we build caring into how we do things and what we choose to do in the world, we are working toward a society where all have what they need to thrive, to participate, to live in health and safety. That feels like justice work to me. And there are some other voices out there, though, that make this point in different ways. Andre Henry is an African-American musician, writer, and activist. I had the joy of working with him and hearing him at Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Church in the summer of 2020 when I served as their temporary minister for a few weeks. He speaks about the heart and spirit necessary to be engaged in the work of transformation. That heart and spirit are at the heart, the core, of activism and transformative justice. He has a regular email newsletter called Hope and Hard Pills. This past week, in pondering the meaning of the work and life of Martin Luther King Jr., he wrote about King's call for a, quote, politics of compassion. Not a passive compassion, not just a personal, quiet compassion, but a compassion that resulted in action in the world. Compassion, he wrote, is not just feeling empathy, being moved by another's pain, but taking action to intervene, to offer support. The nonviolent direct action that King called for and lived out was, for Henry, a compassion in resistance to racist violence. He wrote, the neoliberal backlash to the civil rights struggle demonstrates how threatening compassion is to the racist, exploitative global system of militant profit-making. The architects of our current system of neoliberal racist capitalism, you get where he's coming from, wrote often about the threat of collectivism. They feared that a politics of compassion would unravel the system of cruelty. If the powers that shouldn't be take compassion seriously, so should we, he writes. Think about the things that Martin Luther King was calling us toward throughout his mission, and especially at the end of his life, right up to his death. An integrated society, the beloved community, redistribution of wealth, a universal basic income. Henry sees these as forms of systemic compassion, care as justice. When I think about compassion in action, care that has an impact on the survival and thriving of communities, I think about the manifestation of care and compassion that are what we call mutual aid societies. Mutual aid involves not just giving charity, but the practice of sharing resources of money, food, resources, time, work in support of communities under pressure and attack by discriminatory racist political and economic systems. They are not about one person helping the less privileged, but about groups of people collectively helping each other. When you look back in history, you could identify mutual aid societies in the forms of unions, crafting guilds, the fraternity societies of the Great Depression that collectively shared health and life insurance. More recently, you see mutual aid being used by marginalized communities, people of color, people trapped in poverty, LGBTQ folks, helping each other survive and thrive. Sometimes these groups are formal, sometimes they arise out of needs during disasters and crises, as the groups of people that Rebecca Solnit talked about. People intentionally building networks of caring, like Safe Schools of the Desert, in order to survive and thrive, to learn how we might live together differently, how we might learn to choose care rather than isolation in the face of struggle and challenge. Another way to think about the ways that caring is justice work is to think about how we are with each other, how we treat each other in our justice work, our work to transform society. In our online culture, which many of you may be blissfully unaware of, there is a tendency toward strident calling out of challenging behavior and words, a quick cutting off of connection and support, often with willful disregard for emotional impact and a seeming cutting off of the possibility of change, renewed relationship, and atonement. It's not that we shouldn't care about the impact of our words and actions, and it's not that we shouldn't speak up when we witness harmful things. But we can get caught up in the zeal of our passion, caught up in righteousness, so that we cut off any possibility of transformation and change in those we are rejecting. There's a song in the musical Hair that has these lyrics. How can people be so heartless? How can people be so cruel? Easy to be hard, easy to be cold. How can people have no feelings? How can they ignore their friends? Easy to be proud, easy to say no. And especially people who care about strangers, who care about evil and social injustice. Do you only care about the bleeding crowd? How about a needing friend? I need a friend. In their book, We Will Not Cancel Us and Other Dreams of Transformative Justice, Adrienne Marie Brown and Malkia Devich Cyril write about how the ways that we engage in our work for justice and transformation have had huge impact on the outcome and on our relationships with those who are struggling at our side. They write, movements need to become the practice ground for what we are heading towards. Responsible for embodying what we are inviting our people into, we need the people within our movements, all socialized, all of us, into and by unjust system, to be on liberation paths. They continue not already free, but practicing freedom every day. Not already beyond harm, but accountable for doing our own individual internal work to end harm and engage in generative conflict, which includes actively working to gain awareness of the ways we can and have harmed each other, how we can end cycles of harm and unprincipled struggle in ourselves and in our communities. We can and must do our work for justice and equity with care and compassion in our hearts and our hands. What kind of world are we striving for on the other side of change? How do the ways we act with each other today shape that new reality? I want to end by telling you a personal story. It's not very complicated or long, and I think I have told it to you before, but you know that I like to repeat stories. I was in Chicago a few years ago, actually more than a decade ago, visiting Meadville Lombard Theological School, which was to become my seminary for ministry. For only the second time, it was the day of my application interview to enter the school, so I was a little nervous. I was invited into one of the big old houses on the south side of Chicago that was once one of Meadville's offices, to a table with another student, the admissions officer, and a faculty member I'd never met before, the Reverend David Bumbaugh. Now, this was a man I came to know as a teacher and as a ministerial model, but I had no idea who he was at the time. He just was an imposing figure sitting on the other side of this table. And the interview began, and I was asked all the questions I expected about my past church experiences, my theology, my support system, finances. And then there was a pause, and a single short question from David Bumbaugh. What is the purpose of the church in the world? It's an appropriate question. I asked you that question last week, didn't I? And a huge, frightening question. I breathed, and I breathed again, and I answered something like this. We live in a world that demands, insists, hammers into us that we see each other as competitors, as objects upon which to act, rather than as subjects, real, living, loving people with whom to be in relationship. We're taught to value our own ease and comfort over the needs of the community. We are taught that whatever emptiness and pain there is inside us is cured by a pill or a new cell phone. The purpose of the church, I said, is to teach us to not be that way. As we think about the way we do the work of justice, the way we do the work of healing, the way that we do the work of building community in our hearts and in the world, as we make choices about the way we can build practices and communities of care here and around us, I hope that we'll remember the words of Sharon Salzberg and Robert Thurman that Ginger shared with us earlier, thinking about that subway car. We are going to be together forever. And we need to respond with the wisdom of how interrelated our lives are and will remain. When we remember our interdependence, when we remember the deep and profound ways our lives are intertwined with all of those around us near and far, when we remember our commitments to dignity, equity, and love, may we choose compassion, love, and solidarity, care with our fellow travelers in this life. May we always make that choice. May it be so. I invite you now to rise in body or in spirit as we sing together our closing song, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
Thank you for that lovely reminder of our interconnectedness with the As we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. This is the time when we have congregation. Just a moment.
No, when you get there, I have something to share.
Okay, I have some more. Okay. This is the time when we do our congregational news and announcements. And Sandy Slayton has some things she needs to share with us today. And then it looks like Jane will be next.
Good morning. As we know, I'm Sandy Slayton, and I'm one of the members of the Script to Stage to Screen executive team, along with Margaret Manson, Jim and Levon Swanson, and Terry and Shirley Lemaster. all members of the church here. For those of you who don't know or are new or visitors, the S2S is a theater production script reading project associated with our congregation. So we're really excited about our upcoming play, which is the third one of the season, and it's called Let It Rain. And here's a little teaser, quote, "Putting on a classic American play should be easy for an established community theater. Not so when there are competing agendas among participants as well as community stakeholders." Close quote. Kind of sounds like life, familiar, right? So please join us on Friday, January 26th, which is next weekend, or Saturday, January 27th. The play is at 7:30 right here in the sanctuary. Tickets are $15, and the box office opens at 7 o'clock. And finally, one of the more exciting things about this play is that Lauren Nile, who is a longtime friend of UUCOD, will be performing as one of the cast members. And I believe that this is the first time she'll be performing in front of a live audience, so that's exciting. We know she would appreciate your support, and so would we. So we look forward to seeing you. Thanks.
Now, Jane, you have something you'd like to share with the congregation.
Thank you for letting me interrupt you. All I have to share really is a reminder of our awesome beginning chili cook-off next week. And all of you who have signed up are aiming to beat last year's winner, Ruben Gallardo, who's sitting right back there. And he has in his possession the amazing tacky perpetual trophy that you're. So, Ruben, would you hold up that trophy so they know what they're cooking for? This is what you're cooking for. Woohoo! So, Ruben is the defending champion, so I challenge all of you to make your best chili and see if you can take that home for a whole year with you.
Thank you for that. And don't forget, if you've already given generously towards our Share the Plate today, you can continue to do so. There's a link in the email that was sent out earlier if you want to add some more to that to help support LGBT youth in our community in honor of our very own Gloria Cap. Sharon Salzberg writes, "If our actions are infused with a vision of interconnectedness, then love and kindness will keep us going in our efforts. Interconnectedness isn't an abstract, fanciful notion, but a direct seeing of a deeper reality. With that deeper reality of that interconnectedness in our hearts, with the possibility of choosing always to care for each other in our minds, go forth in peace, my friends, to love and serve the world."